Okay, good afternoon. I think most of us are here in the room. Thanks for joining in this, or attending this panel. I think we now have the next 50 minutes. We have time to share some of the experience of the memory institutions participating in the PREFORMA PCP with you. Experiences in using the PREFORMA tools. Of course, we will talk about, or we'll share experiences about using the software that has been developed in the project, but I hope we also have the opportunity to discuss other experiences. How it is to introduce the practice of conformance checker in your institution. There was also a very deliberate open source perspective aspect of the project, and not for all institutions that was evident, or for a lot of us this was new. So what are the experiences with introducing the principles of using and developing open source in memory institutions? How was it to participate in a PCP in itself? Because the PCP for us was, it has been mentioned earlier today, it was actually a quite new format, a new procurement format, and actually we had to find out and to experiment how to use that instrument and what are the benefits, what are the risks. And one of the aspects, one of the characteristics of that procurement scheme is that you don't procure like a fixed solution, but you define a kind of open challenge, and actually you collaborate as a memory institution with the developers over a period of 4 years, developing the solution you need for your institution. And another important part was the standard specification. So some of us have also contributed in writing, improving specifications. So it's not only about, okay, how was it to install the tool, open the tool, does it work, it's a nice interface. No, we try to handle these different aspects of the project. As a kind of, as a way of introduction, I'm screening here the challenge brief. So, as I told you before, in the beginning of the project, we defined the challenge for the project. What do we aim for? So in the end, the solutions we did, the tools we develop, the practices we develop, what problem should actually be solved? And that phrase or that challenge that reads like empowering memory institutions to gain full control of the technical properties of digital content intended for long-term preservation. So that catchphrase, every time in the project when it was not clear which way to choose, you could go back to this phrase. This is actually what we aim for. And as a way to introduce the 6 people here on in the couch, I would like to ask each of you, like, that empowerment, what does that mean for each of your institutions? And explain very short, name of your institution was, what kind of collection you're dealing with. So, Eric.
Hello. So I'm Erik Beulings. I come from the Royal Institute of Cultural Heritage. It's one of the memory institutions involved in the project. And our main business is the study and all kinds of things around conservation and restoration of works of art. But I come from the documentation department where we have all the documentation about this thing, but we also have a photographic archive of 1 million photos and their negatives. And it's with this collection that we came into the PREFORMA project. So we wanted and we worked for having a TIFF as an image format for conformance checking, but we also have lots of JPEGs and other kind of formats even. So we would like also that this kind of conformance checking was going to be enlarged in the future for other formats. What were the other questions?
That was everything, Eric.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, once again, I'm Marju Niinema. I work for the Ministry of Culture of Estonia, and I work at the Cultural Heritage Department. As a ministry, we are responsible for the policy, and we are policymakers, but one part of this is still that in Estonia there are a lot of memory institutions, and so it's important for us that the heritage will be preserved. And it's not only the physical one, but also the digital one, as we are working together with National Library And from previous session, you heard from Raivo a lot of what they are doing here, and so.
So it's also part of the discussion on legal deposits and how you check formals there. That's part of the discussion. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Claes Jadeglans, Riksarkivet MKC from Sweden, National Archives. Sorry. I'm here actually for two reasons, because we are both a memory institutions, but where the department I work at is also producing images every day in a high volume. So for me, it's very much, empowering is very much quality assurance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
For me personally.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Erwin Verbruggen. I work at the Netherlands Institute for Sound and Vision, where the public audiovisual archive and broadcast archive for the public broadcasters in the Netherlands. And so I'm one of the 4 partners that focus on audiovisual assets. And I think at the beginning of the project, when Bert was challenging us to get a coherent vision on the challenge brief, we had a lot of back and forths because we had a very specific wish to stick with the standard that we knew and supported, which is MXF, which is very broadly accepted in the broadcast domain. And then Bert finally convinced us to put down our weapons, our shields, our defenses, and accept that there's other possibilities out there that might be useful to other organizations. One of the reasons why we finally gladly accepted that is because we were a national institution, so that we like to think that our choices reflect on smaller players in our domain in the Netherlands, and so this empowerment question, I liked it how Julia started off this morning by saying, well, taking control means that you can take a position, they can explain why you're taking that position. And basically, when other institutions and organizations in the Netherlands say something about formats for audiovisual, they look at us and they say, well, Sound and Vision does X, so we'll do X, while it may not always be the optimal choice for their specific collection. So around the challenge brief time, we also started digging in a little deeper. I've been with the institution for a while, but I don't know every nook and cranny, to listen, to see or learn more about how did that decision come about? How do we maintain this decision? How do we defend this decision? And then we sort of, I learned that although there is a lot of expertise in-house, we don't have the file format specialist. Well, we're supposed to have that expertise. We rely on external expertise, and then it becomes a bit of the empowerment becomes very dependent on who it is that you listen to. And so that's, I think, one of the lessons from the PREFORMA project is that regarding, there is no right answer to the path that you need to follow for your collection or for your collection care and management. But the answers that you come up with very much depend on who you do it for, but also who you do it with. Who are the kind of organizations that help support your technological choices.
Thanks, Everett, for already formulating the conclusion of the panel in advance. It's very good.
I just want to get to the drinks.
We can go for drinks now.
Hello, my name is Bengt Neis and I'm from the National Library of Sweden. And as a National Library, we get a lot of legal deposit of different types of contents like television, radio, print as well. These kinds of prints that we digitize. We do web harvesting, and we have quite a diverse digital collections, and being empowered in our case, or in my case, is that we need to increase our knowledge about these collections that has become quite large all the time. With large collections, you kind of need to work with them with software, and you don't want to end up with 70 million errors, something like that.
Hello, I am David Iglesias. I am from Girona City Council, Catalonia. I am an archivist there. We manage the historical archive, the administrative archive, and what's more important also, we manage private archives, like newspapers, one national, one local, 2 TV stations, one national, one local, and 1 radio. For this project, we focus on the photo collection. It's 3 million, 1 million is digital. So our experience is with TPF Manager and with TIFF files. And about empowerment, what's really important and what's a key issue for managing a photographic collection is the understanding of the object. And these tools helps for the understanding. And we have some experience, previous experience with the chemistry photography. If we are not able to analyze the morphology of a photograph, we are not able to preserve these images. So with the digital files, it's something similar in the sense that we need to understand how is the structure of these files, which information is related, how is related, and see all the possibilities we have for preserving, but also for managing.
Okay, thank you. I hope, or I guess you noticed that the sounding board of institutions we had in the project to develop the 3 tools is very diverse, dealing with different content types, pictures, audiovisual, and text is also reflected in the 3 tools. But also organizations with a different structure and also with a different kind of workflows, going from quality assurance to checking old legacy collection material to dealing with digital, with legal deposits. So, but that was at the same time also an advantage. So, because that forces to make the requirements very generic and think them through. And I think for the panel, I think the most obvious question now at the end of the project is we have 3 tools here in the corridor outside, and yeah, what is the level of adoption? Are you actually using the tools today? And just as a starter, I want to do a quick round with hands up, hands down, with 5 small questions, just to give you an idea on what's the level of adoption. Who of you personally has used the tools? One of the 3 tools? That's already a luck. Who of you convinced your colleagues to use the tool? And who convinces management to use the tools? Yeah, that's... Why would you want to do that? No, just in order to get money and time to work on it.
I can just add that I have a comfortable position that the management will accept what I decide. So.
Yeah, lucky bastards. Who is actually deploying the tool in this kind of production environment? 3 of them, it's half. And just a question for all of you, like there are also 3 companies and suppliers outside. Who of you considers paying for deployment of the tool? Also half. So I see there is a kind of point, okay, playing around. If I sense a bit that we're in the level of playing around with the tool and experimenting, and some are already in the stage of deploying the tool. And actually what I'm interested from you is what are now, at this moment, the thresholds or the obstacles for actually adopting the tool in your organization. Perhaps I should start with the 2 people who hesitated to say, yes, we're deploying. Let's say Edwin, for example. I think you have been working on Media Conch, with Media Conch?
Yes, so audiovisual format checker. I think it's because, do we get other questions about the standardization process? Because I think we're now sort of intertwining those 2.
If you insist, I will ask you a question about standardization.
Yes, please. No, so the reason I'm hesitating is that we are currently using, so Media Conch has the conformance checker feature and the policy checking feature. And we are currently using the policy checker to check files that we receive from external partners to... I have a Fairphone put in my face. So we're checking files coming from external partners that are not checked internally by the direct stream, because then that direct stream we had already at the beginning of the project employed commercially available and closed tools that check these MXF files. So that's why the partial deployment. But, and the reason why I want to expand your question to the standardization process is that we're investigating to what extent we should accept or broaden the amount of archive master standards that we do have, because we now sort of put everything in a straight jacket of the file format that we have and know and control.
Which file format?
Which is MXF.
MXF, yeah. With content, the video streams are?
The HD is XDCAM and MPEG-2 for regular standard definition material. But so we're investigating whether we can add more possibilities, for example, non-broadcast collections. And
so if I understand well, the policy checker is essential for you to use the tool at this moment?
At this moment, we are only using the policy checker.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
And the discussion on whether you should use the format we worked on in the project, we're now 4 years later, that's apparently something that takes time.
It is something that takes time, just like the standardization process itself.
How is that in Kiki Irpa for the pictures? Because you also, if I understood well, close to deploying or using the tool?
Yeah, well, the problem we had, of course, is that since this is a kind of a long-term process, that the real usable tool we got fairly late in the timeline of the project. So we're still in the process of testing it. While I know that it works, but we're still in the process of employing it as a test tool before really put it into production. We want to do two things with this tool. For instance, we have already digitized photographs, and it's also about 1 million of objects that were done since the middle of the 90s up till now. They are stored in JPEGs and different flavors of TIFFs. So we'd like to do an analysis of our collection using this tool, but of course it won't only do an analysis of the TIFF files. And then secondly, and this is for me very important too, we want to put a tool in our day-to-day production of new digitized file formats. And there, again, for me it was important to be involved even in the preparation of the proposal and in the challenge. We could maybe come later to that. But it was also very important, and I'm very happy to say this, that for DPF Manager, the only tool I considered, although we will probably use at least very much Vera PDF and maybe even the other one, they were very responsive for adding certain elements of policies that are important for us. So this is something that's interesting, and this is also something, and I will add this now.
So you were able to work on the flaws in the tool that were initially.
So, and this also that will for me, is an element of a little concern that we can have this after the project finishes? Will there be a kind of enough?
That has to do with the level of trust, whether your organization trusts the tool.
For something that's after the analysis of this 1 million photographs, if we need other things that has to be checked, can this be added to a tool like that?
There's something I also want to ask to Klaas from the digitization office from Riksarkivet. For you, what are the obstacles for you for using? I understood that also trust in the tool was also important for your organization to do quality control on what you produce. Yeah?
One of the issues with the trust, as you say, is the trust in open source. Very much from the management and other parts of the organizations that doesn't know what to know about the system.
And what kind of doubts are in your organization about using open source for this?
Well, if you're paying little or nothing, you get what you pay for is many.
If it's for free, it can't be a good tool.
Can't be a good tool. Yes, that's you get what you pay for is many people's.
And how did you overcome this in the project? Because I guess you're working on this for 4 years now.
Well, I'm kind of sneaking it in. I'm the designer of the workflow system, so I'm the system architect that builds the system. So pretty much I put it in there and say we must use it.
You have a lot of room to budget for developer.
True, because in some cases I'm the developer too. So, but there is a partial implementation. Mostly because it's a day-to-day, daily production and it's hundreds of thousands of images going by. I don't want to stop the production. So it's more of a warning system for me now.
Eric said that he had a very fruitful collaboration with the developers. Was that also your experience, or because you said you develop things yourself because you're responsible for the whole workflow? How was the collaboration with developers in the projects?
You mean these three?
The people from DPF?
I think there's been good. They have listened to me when I have had questions, and they have answered my questions in a way.
Perhaps one more, and I want to hear a library. So perhaps Bengt, because I can imagine in your case you're also running a whole workflow and a whole technical infrastructure, but there might be, what kind of obstacles or thresholds are you experiencing?
We have been looking into MediaConch as well, and but at an earlier stage in the project, and at that particular time, MediaConch didn't have the functionality for the functionality to give us those policies that we wanted to check.
Was it similar to what Erwin was explaining? That actually you have to deal with other types of formats with basically the policy checker that was interesting, or is it?
In this case, it was in a particular in the legal deposit workflow for television. So it was the policy checker that we were looking into, and we are in fact using a commercial software at the moment. So when the open source tools can compete and give us give us the effect that we want from the software, it will be an option to use open source instead.
You said, we looked at the dual already in the beginning of the phase, and if you look 4 years later now, do you see any difference? Like, is it closer to what you need for your organization?
I think it's closer, and we will start a new test round, and as well check on how well we can implement it in our workflow for this legal deposit.
You're working in the context of a legal deposit. Do you have like tools to influence the producers of audiovisual files to use the archive file that we worked on? Or?
We have not talked to the producers yet in that particular case. We have another producer here, so, but he is already involved. But we have kind of different workflows for different suppliers. We have one law that is for electronically published document on the internet, and that is one workflow. We have another one that is based on another law where television and radio comes in, and that is a different workflow and different kind of legal context that we work within.
Clear. I would continue to David to hear about Girona, because that's also a completely different context. You're basically a city archive, and you have very different type of collection you're dealing with. Which one? I think you mentioned it already in the introduction.
The photography collection.
Photography collection.
Yes.
So you're also dealing with DPF Manager, which is actually based in Girona.
Yes.
So they were also physically nearby. What's your experience with collaborating with them?
It's a very good experience, and the result, I think, it's very satisfactory for us. The only thing is that we have a small TIFF collection. Most of our digital files are in other formats, and that's why we use this now for analyzing and for understanding the TIFFs of different producers, different software, but we cannot use for production because, for example, what we are digitizing now is in raw file, in proprietary raw file. And this is the master for us.
So that's also
And-
similar as with what Edwin and Bengt has experienced. Like your practice for the moment is different. You're using another format than what we worked in the projects. Yeah.
And then we have high volume of ingestion of JPEG files because of the work with the newspapers. So everything is in JPEG. So this is a difficulty now if we want to use DPF for production. But I think that we are not so far for using it because, for example, as we have learned from Isinova, DNG is very close to TIFF-EP, and TIFF-EP is working.
DNG is like a standardized version of a raw file, if I could very
So if they are able and they have the resources to develop for DNG, that will be a good solution. And I think it would be a good solution for a very important international community because people are digitizing in RAW and they are keeping RAW because you have the original if you want the final picture, but you have all the information there for editing in the future now. So it's something that everybody have. And the photographers, now we receive a collection of a portrait gallery and we receive the negatives. In the future, we hope we will receive the raw files. But you know, nowadays, raw files have no future. So it's something that it's really worrying.
Huge question
for us. Yes.
Goodness, leaves only Mario. And I think you've been basically working also with the Vera PDF project, so the PDF projects.
Yes.
What was your experience with them?
I think the cooperation is really good because depending on if you have questions or you want to do some changes or you always have the chance to ask. This is really important to ask from somebody, why is it not working? Is it my problem or is it the problem of the software? What could be done differently? Is it correct way? I think this feedback in both sides is really important for the memory institutions, also for the software developers.
And what were like the obstacles you were facing in your organization? Because I think you also have to deal with a kind of legal deposit workflow.
Yeah, but for the ministry we don't use it, but for I think the memory institutions it's also because it's one piece of tool that has to fit into the other workflows. Yeah, it's the main question how to put it in a chain that works and how to make it efficient. Does it support your other activities? Do you need to change your other activities, the other tools? It's a process and it takes time. And
I can imagine that there are a lot of requirements. If you have such a complex system in place and someone is developing for you such a tool, you have a whole list of requirements. Were you able to communicate them to the developers in the project?
Yeah, I haven't been from the beginning, but I think in that way, yeah, you can always communicate, and it's also the communication what is useful, because for one reason this is important for me, but is it important for also the others memory institutions who are using the software, and how much effort is it, and what is the problem, and how easily it is implementing.
So you've listened to a whole series of reasons why you're still in the process of deploying the tool. And of course, these tools at the end of the PCP, they're not like, they're near markets, or they should be ready to go to the market. So you're still working with very mature prototypes. But as you know, now the next step for them is to create offerings, market offerings, and bring these tools to the market and provide services. And since you all are facing a lot of problems implementing the tool or convincing your organization, I would wonder why these three companies outside, if they could help you to solve this problem. And perhaps they could provide you service, you pay for them, and a service that could help you. What kind of services could they provide to help you to convince your management, solve the integration in the workflow? Perhaps there are any ideas? If I think about,
one of the offerings I would like to see that I really want to see is expertise. They have to give him, if they give me the knowledge, show me that I have the knowledge and can also analyze files, saying what's wrong with this one. Is it, will you be able to archive this? Is it good? Is it bad? Because I can't have all that knowledge within me.
So it's even the simple consultancy, like, okay, I have a file here. Here
that
it is.
would be
Could
one
you have
of
a
the-
look? Could you have a look at the file with your own tool, which I have as well,
Sure.
and explain me what's? Yeah.
Sure, and
And how does that help your organization then?
one is knowing our own quality, and also since we are in the position of delivering files to others, to other institutions, then they will give us a better position, saying we can stand for this.
Yeah.
It's because we have someone backing us up, saying this is good, this is what the correct.
I also heard another scenario, which also was mentioned earlier today, like, okay, perhaps we have tools and workflows and we know how to, we have an idea of a tool, we just have to implement this tool for other file formats. I know for the DNG example, is there someone else who say this would help then? Erwin, for example? Yeah.
Hi. Again, to the point, like the adoption of the tools comes after the adoption of the standard that we propose. And I think PREFORMA has, specifically for, FFE1 Matroska, has made a big dent, a sort of a big mentality change in the people that I know in the audiovisual archival domain, where, before PREFORMA started, it wasn't really an option that was taken seriously. And now there's a lot more sort of, because there's a European Commission label on it, because there's adoption by a number of larger organizations, suddenly, you have this sort of group peer pressure almost to say like, oh, what is your, people are pressured into taking a stance towards this format, which doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best solution for them or for their particular collection, but at least sort of it's on the radar, and it's sort of, it's been more ratified to some extent. And then the same as David says, or in our case, like if your process is applied towards one specific standard, well, these tools won't match that. But it's as we said, I think from the beginning of the project, there is that chicken and egg conversation that we're trying to solve at once within PREFORMA, to say like, oh, this is a great standard, but there's no tools for it, or versus that's a great tool, but we're not using the standard. So we really, I think it's important to stress for the people that took the time to come here, like what we're really looking for is adopters. Yeah. And what we're all trying to see is to what extent can we be the adopters and the people that bring it into our own institutions. And then finally, but that's on a very concrete level, and I'm not sure whether Jérôme talked about this earlier. The people from at least MediaConch and perhaps the other teams as well are already sort of gearing towards what to do after PREFORMA, because PREFORMA had a very specific question for one specific codec with a very specific container. And I think all the teams are sort of looking at the future after PREFORMA, where these tools can accept other standards beyond what PREFORMA was funding specifically. So in our case, if we can investigate the possibility of FFE1 in MXF, for us that's an interesting,
makes sense.
Something interesting to look at, because that works with the systems that we have in place.
We've been talking now for 20 minutes about our experiences with using the tools, but I can imagine that there might be questions in the room. And I know that Claudio is somewhere here with a microphone, I hope. Is there any question from... We got...
Maybe back to...
I was looking for you.
Not that guy.
Hi, I'm Peter Bubestinger, and I have a question for the audience. Who of the audience actually has used the tools yet? Okay.
So I could also ask, what are the obstacles now?
Yeah, like the same questions that you had. Because
we can do it again for next one.
Yes. Yeah. It's not that many yet.
There were 5 people. Can you raise your hand again? Okay, 10 people, more or less.
Oh, okay.
I can ask the same question. And were you convinced of the tool? You raise your hand. Not all. Yeah, almost all of them. Did you convince your colleagues, or I guess you're in a team in an IT staff somewhere in an institution?
Bert?
Yeah.
Okay.
Eric?
It would be a good idea that, for me, that these questions that you pose now in the public are answered by people who are not in the project. So this will narrow it down a bit. So who has used the PREFORMA tool and is not partner in the project?
That's a good point.
Okay, we have 2 over there. 3.
That was a bias. Okay. And who convinces management to use the tool of these 3 people? 1/2. Half. So it's more or less the same. I can perhaps ask, because the microphone is already there. What were the main questions in using the tool for your manager? Do you recognize this story? Yeah.
Yes, I do. Hi, I'm Alessandra from Luxembourg. Yes, I do actually, because it's interesting that it may have been adopted on lower levels, but management is still réticent. How do you say that? Not as excited as we are. Yeah, so no, I do recognize. I mean, this is an apt.
And does it also has to do with, actually you're dealing with other file formats which are not proper archiving formats, and the change of policy that takes a lot of time? Is that also something that is playing there?
Yes, I mean, I am from a national audiovisual archive, so and we come from a wealthy country, so we have the thing of we were just talking earlier with Jerome, what we call the black box, is that we just bought something 10 years ago, and now we have it. Yeah. And any change requires a lot of work and a lot of involvement from different people. So, yeah, in regards to adoption, it's quite tricky.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Peter wants to say something.
Sorry, just one more thing. I'm speaking with vendors of systems that cater digitization preservation needs, because very often they didn't consider that they could be using these tools in their tool chain. I'm like, hey, but if you produce a system that produces files, it would be in your interest as a vendor to check whether the files you produce actually are correct. And they're like, yeah, we did it once. And I'm like, yeah, you did it once, but every time they change something, and I've encountered this in the past, like on the file creating side, things may change without the people actually changing it, noticing it. I just wanted to have this put out. That's another use case that a lot of people are not aware of. And now I'll hand on the microphone.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, perhaps it's good for the last 10 minutes to move to the second point which I want to discuss, and that doesn't have to do so much with the tools, but what the procedure we use to develop the tools and also the standards. And that's the whole idea of PCP, which is, to wrap it up, very simple. It's a kind of procurement methods where you define an open goal, a problem, for a set of, in this case, memory institutions that where there is no product on the market to solve that problem. And actually you want to procure not one tool, but basically different tools that solve the same problem in order not to create a new monopoly situation. And therefore you use a kind of staged procurement method, a kind of competition-like method, where in our case we started with 16 tenders. We invited 6 companies to make a design for a tool, and then we continued with the 3 tools that you find now in the corridor. And another idea behind this working method is that you have a kind of collaboration between memory institutions, the clients actually who set the specifications, collaborating with research institutes, universities who provide the knowledge to assess the quality of the tools and the development being done. And then, in our case, through 3 developers or 3 development consortia companies who actually do the work of writing the code and developing the tool. And that was quite new for us because most of the time we're used to tender for something and we define exactly precisely what we want with very thick, heavy books with specifications. And here it was actually an open end. And so I want to know, again, a quick round with questions. In this method, the memory institutions were supposed to provide feedback throughout the process, from writing the tender, evaluating the different, writing the tender specification, evaluating the different tenders, evaluating the designs and the prototypes. And just for your own feeling, I want to know, like, who felt that he had impact on writing the challenge brief and the tender specification in the beginning? Okay. And who actually really could participate in the development of the prototype, the design of the prototype? And who believed they had impact on the evaluation of the results? All of them, good. I think what I just want to know, from all of you have at some point raised your hand, could you give me like one example in this working method where you really were able to have impact? I see Edwin already taking the microphone.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think one of the premises of the PCP model was that we would be pooling expertise, that we would have a way of, involving vendors, developers, people that have, decades of experience, and that we could have an informed discussion. And I think that one of the things that we noticed in the project is that us as end users really needed to, and I'll leave in the middle whether we managed to, but that we really needed to step up our game in terms of, the knowledge needed to have that conversation needed. It's coming back and sort of keep on stealing Julia's point about taking a stance. Like, you need a lot of knowledge about how these systems and formats intricately work together before you can even start considering what you need to do. And not all of the partners were necessarily technically inclined. So
what specifically for your organization, what did you realize, what kind of knowledge you didn't have in your organization, for example?
Knowledge about other formats than the one that we use ourselves.
So actually your view was actually completely narrowed to that format you were working with?
Yes.
Yeah. How is it with Bengt?
I think one important thing that we were talking about early in the project was how this kind of software could be implemented in different kind of workflows and different kind of use cases. And I'll remember this mic closer to my mouth. We had this discussion on having it as a desktop tool or being able to implement it as a service within a different kind of workflow or have it as a command line tool to be able to use it in that kind of workflow and so on.
These are completely
the technical implementation, and I think that was a good discussion we had then to have tools that could be implemented in different kind of environments and different kind of use cases.
It was also something completely new for memory institutions to participate in a testing process of software, because it's something that we're not used. Admin is not.
I don't fully agree, but I want to go back to your question from the last round for a sec, because you asked all of us and the audience, whose management try the tools. I don't think it's the role of management to try out tools.
But to convince using the tools.
But I think sort of the thing that I didn't manage to do in the project was, I think all of us, yes, we're all publicly funded institutions, and so PREFORMA took a bit of a hardline stance on applying open source tools and methods, and that's not something that our institutions necessarily have as a policy. I didn't manage to write in our policy, we'll always consider open source options before considering market solutions or something in that vein. It's not on the agenda. And I think it's an important impulse to show to the organization that the tools that are out there are, how do you say that, adult enough, or like are developed enough, are ready, mature enough, thank you, to be used and to be considered, and that it's really important for, as an organization, to consider that option before other options, because there are certain benefits.
Maturity is also something that came back at Riksarkivet, I remember. You mentioned it before, again, the importance of maturity of tools in order to build trust in the tools. Yeah. Did you have the feeling, you already touched a little bit on that you had impact during the development or in the evaluation process to make the tools more mature? Or
well,
was it...
one of the impacts I feel I contributed with was the importance of performance.
Yeah.
Because the tool can be as good, perfect in every sense, but if it takes 10 hours to assess one image, then it's not usable. So, and we have a continuous workflow, we need performance. So, and I think we gained that. We brought up the questions and gained performance.
Perhaps it's good to hear, Eric, I think your institution has very little technical capacity or ICT capacity, and also on the technical level to contribute in the project. But were there other fields you could contribute in the project? Was there a place for you in this?
Yes. What I want to stress is that, in fact, we opted for TIFF as a file format in our institutions before PREFORMA or discussions about PREFORMA started, because we realized that this is, at that time, was the only real suitable format for long-term preservation. So when the discussion started, when the project started, I was happy to see that TIFF was held like the one, because we were limited in number of things that we could do. So TIFF was kept as the one image format for testing and for developing. Of course, I realized that maybe half of it or more of our collection is JPEGs, and at that time JPEG was not good enough for long-term preservation, but I'll know also from people working in the JPEG International Committee that they're working on a new JPEG format who is suitable for these kinds of things. So it would be nice that if there's an extension to both, that they get in contact with that. So this is an element where I feel that as a small institution, we did have an impact on the project, so we're happy with this impact. In the decision making. Yeah, in the decision evaluation of the tools. Yeah. And then just another small one, the fact that we could propose certain elements of policies to be included in the policy checker. This was also very important for us. So even without technical knowledge, just we don't have the technical knowledge, although we are. I must say that in the Belgian government, many years ago, tried once to impose open source solutions to the institutions. So I installed OpenOffice and used LibreOffice. And when I sent a document to my Belgian government in that format, it comes back that we can't read it. So can you use a doc file? So this didn't work out. But there was this idea from the governments that open source is a viability or is a possible solution. Internally, due to annual decrease of 2% in our dotation for money, so we can't ever give a financial help to external people to use. So we need these open source solutions. I read a study 10 years ago or a month ago that on a financial level, using open source or using proprietary solution probably comes at the same cost, because you need internal, more IT capacity people, so that's more expensive. And luckily, we can't find IT people to work for the government in Belgium, so we bid in a dead end. So if we are in this project, we really would like an open source solution that is really functional, that can be used and installed without too much technical. I would like to move to the final question, because we're almost finished. Perhaps Mario,
We had this beautiful pre-commercial procurement scheme, this approach. Are there any lessons? If you would do the project again, if we would set up a new PCP project specifically with memory institutions, are there things we should keep in mind this time we forgot in PREFORMA?
I think in general it has been a really good experience. People have learned a lot, and I think the main thing is to work together as a team and set the goals and ideas as a team, and also it's the communication. I think at the beginning it has to be really set straight or something like that, that you know what you want and what you expect, and the other half also knows what they can provide and what are the realistic expectations and what we will do, what would be the result of the project. I think that's really, and the knowledge of, the exchange of the knowledge, I think it's the best thing.
David, I understood that you also had a very good experience with working, collaborating in the projects. Are there any things if you look back in the past 4 years?
Yes, we have had a very good experience, and I think we collaborated and we suggested some specific things regarding the software, the DPF. But what I think is really relevant for memory institutions is that what's important is to have an understanding of what we have, and to have a clear idea of our workflows, and to be very precise, identifying functionalities. And then for these functionalities, we need the tools, we need the software, because many times it happens the opposite. We start adapting.
Did you have the feel that this happened in this project, that we first started developing, and that afterwards you were able to obtain a clear view on your workflows? Was it the opposite, the other way around in this project?
No, I think in this project we had the opportunity we start from the beginning, so at least we have the opportunity to communicate our needs and our point of view for this. But in other cases it's not like this. So I think this is the good news for us. And we had a voice. We never have a voice. Memory institutions. When I think about photography industry, they doesn't exist. Even the important ones, when they create a metadata working group, there are not memory institutions. There are the big companies. There are the agencies, news agencies. They have their IPTC talking about metadata that is included in Photoshop. But what about memory institutions? Do you have experience on this, and when we have something to say?
It was also addressed earlier on that we have to reach out with our standards in that case. Other lessons learned?
Well, one of the lessons personally for me is I've been involved in quite a few procurements, and they're all normal, or say normal procurements. They're all in the sense of writing a specification, sending out a tender, and evaluating the results. You lean back and wait for the results. No engagement.
No engagement.
PCP, much more engagement is needed. Don't underestimate the level of engagement needed during the procurement.
With that engagement, there comes also a question for a lot of input and technical knowledge you have to provide.
Yes, but also the positive thing of that engagement, the negative, of course, you have to work. The positive thing is that you have the ability to really get what you want. Because it's impossible to share in the beginning in a specification your vision of what you want.
Correct.
But here you can steer the ship all the way, a little bit crooked maybe, but you will get what you want.
But it requires involvement all the way until the end of the process. Any other lessons?
It depends on if you have another question or not.
No.
Okay. No, because it's not really related to PC brief commercial procurement, but it's related to the way this made this the PREFORMA project a project where we indeed are involved and makes ourselves think. So a lesson learned for our institution through this PREFORMA project, in whatever form it may be, is that it's very important for many institutions to think in-house about these standards, about file formats, about what we are doing. We were too long thinking that, Adobe Photoshop creates something, so that's must be perfect. So this is a lesson learned.
So you don't have to spend part of the time to make up your mind on the policy, but that you have this policy ready in the beginning. Yeah.
So that's a realization. So that a realization for us that in fact we're taking too much things for granted, and we have to take in-house, we have to work on that too. And I forgot just a little empowerment that we had in the project from the first question.
Eric, tell me, do you feel empowered?
I feel completely empowered. No, so what PREFORMA did for us, that it laid the groundwork for building in-house expertise for 5 more formats, and this on a technical and on a philosophical level. So that's really one of the things that's for us, even if the tool will maybe disappear in the future, it did help us to prepare for the future in-house.
Thank you. Then I only have to ask if Peter has a question. No? Then we can go now. Thank you very much for attending the panel.